There's a certain silence you learn to keep when you're the outsider in your own home. I used to be louder, back when Ethan and I first moved in. Fresh from our wedding, filled with plans. I would fill the kitchen with music while I cooked, call my mom just to chat, or FaceTime my brother Nick so he could help pick out curtain colors. I brought color into the rooms, laughter into the hallways. I truly believed we were building something together. Not just walls and furniture, but a life. But over time, the brightness dimmed. My calls were too loud, my mom's visits too frequent, Nick's jokes too much. Ethan never directly banned anyone. He just made me feel like inviting them was a disruption. Like my side of the family was cluttering his carefully curated peace. Eventually, I stopped. But this year, Memorial Day weekend, that silence became deafening. The morning started like any other. Ethan was in the backyard arranging patio furniture while I prepared the food. Pasta salad, deviled eggs, burgers marinating in the fridge. It was our usual tradition, or at least it used to be ours. By 11 a.m., his family began trickling in. His mom brought her signature potato salad that no one ever ate, but everyone praised. His dad hauled in 2 coolers of beer. Ashley and Nate arrived next, dragging foldable chairs and beach toys even though we were nowhere near water. "Smells good already," Nate said, clapping Ethan on the back. Ashley wrinkled her nose at the kitchen island. "You made the deviled eggs again?" she asked, picking up a spoon. "They're cute." I smiled politely. "They're the same ones you liked last year." She shrugged. "Well, they're not my mom's recipe, but sure." Her mother, who was already outside, had brought store-bought hummus and pita chips, but no one dared critique her choices. As the barbecue picked up, I found myself in hostess mode, offering drinks, refilling bowls, wiping sticky hands. No one offered help. That too was tradition. At one point, I sat down with a plate for myself. Ribs, corn on the cob, a scoop of my own salad. I was halfway through a bite when I heard it. "It's so peaceful this year," Ashley said from the lawn chair beside Ethan. She sipped from her tumbler, shades reflecting the sky. "No chaotic side dishes. No chaotic guests." Nate chuckled. "Yeah, Olivia's brother isn't here lighting things on fire." Ethan snorted. "Don't jinx it." Ashley leaned closer, voice mock gentle. "Guess even your family got the message." My fork hovered midair. I blinked, willing myself to stay calm. "I didn't invite anyone this year," I said evenly. "Per Ethan's request." Ashley's brows lifted, pretending surprise. "Oh well, it's just nicer this way, you know." Ethan gave me a look that was supposed to be thankful, but all I saw was smugness. That night, after the chairs were folded and the dishes stacked in the sink, I found Ethan on the couch scrolling through his phone. "I want to talk about today," I said quietly. "Can it wait?" he muttered. "I'm beat." "No," I said. "It can't." He sighed, dropped the phone beside him. "What?" "You let them insult my family again. And this time, you told me not to invite them at all. Because your mom comes in judging everything, and your brother makes a mess of everything else," he snapped. He was joking, Ethan. Last year was one time. He even apologized. "Doesn't mean I want to deal with him again." I stared at him. "You're punishing my whole family over one incident." He leaned forward, voice low and sharp. "This is my house, Olivia. I get to decide who comes in and who doesn't." "Our house," I corrected. "I pay the mortgage," he said flatly. "I maintain the place. Your family, they don't contribute. They bring stress." "So, yes," I said, "I didn't want them here. And if that's a deal breaker for you," he gestured toward the front door, "you know where it is." The silence that followed was like a vacuum. I waited for him to take it back, soften, say something, anything to make it sting less. He didn't. I nodded once. "Got it." He turned back to his phone like the conversation was over. Maybe for him it was, but for me, something clicked. Not rage, not sadness, just clarity. The next morning, I woke up early. The sky was still bruised from sleep, pale gold streaking through the clouds. I didn't slam drawers or stomp around. I packed quietly, a week's worth of clothes, my laptop, toiletries, and the framed photo of my mom and me at the lake house. I stood in the living room for a moment before leaving, looking around at the space we once decorated together. The rug was crooked. The vase I'd picked out had been moved, replaced with one his mom brought as a gift. Even the cushions on the couch had been rearranged to match her sense of taste. I left my key on the table. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. When I opened the door, the morning air met me with soft humidity. A few paper napkins from the barbecue were still stuck in the bushes. The scent of charcoal lingered in the grass. I didn't look back. I didn't slam the door. But I didn't lock it either because it was never mine to lock. My mom didn't ask any questions when I showed up at her door with a duffel bag and tired eyes. She just opened her arms, held me longer than I expected, and said, "I'll put the kettle on." That first day, I barely spoke. I curled up on the couch in the living room where I used to study for finals, surrounded by the hum of the dishwasher, the faint scent of lavender from her fabric spray. My brother Nick stopped by that evening, dropping a takeout bag on the table. "You're really here," he said, looking at me carefully. "You okay?" I hesitated, then nodded. Better here than there. He didn't ask for details, just sat beside me, opened the food containers, and passed me a fork. "You want me to go talk to him?" he offered later, not joking. "No," I said. "He wouldn't hear it anyway." The next morning, I stepped outside for fresh air and found my Uncle Tom in the driveway unloading something from the back of his truck. I hadn't even realized he was in town. "Hey Liv," he said, his voice calm as ever. "Your mom mentioned you were here." I nodded. "Just for a while." He gave me a long look, then motioned toward the porch. "Got a minute?" We sat on the old swing, the one he built years ago when he remodeled the deck. "I hear things got tense," he said simply. I exhaled. "You could say that." Ethan's family always struck me as tight-lipped. Not your kind of people. They don't think my kind of people belong at the table. He didn't ask what happened. Instead, he leaned back and rocked slowly. "What's the name of his company again?" I blinked. "Why?" Tom just shrugged, curious. "Always good to know who's in business with who." "Evergreen Builds," I said after a pause. "Why?" He didn't answer. Just stood up, patted my shoulder once, and walked back to his truck. That was Tom. Quiet, careful, and never dramatic. But I knew that look. It meant something had shifted. Later that week, I overheard him on the phone in the den. His voice was low but firm. "Yes, I understand the penalties. No, we won't be moving forward with Phase 2. Effective immediately." I stepped into the room just as he was hanging up. He looked over at me. "That was legal," he said. "Everything's clean." "What did you do?" "I cancelled the distribution contract," he said plainly. "Harbor and Hearth will no longer use Evergreen Builds for the retail expansion." My heart skipped. That was a $2 million project. "Not anymore." I stared at him. "You didn't have to." "I know," he said. "But I won't have our name, or yours, associated with people who humiliate their own." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gloat. Just returned to his coffee and let the storm start elsewhere. And storm it did. By Friday, Ethan's phone lit up like a bonfire. First came the internal panic. His operations lead texting in all caps, 9:42 a.m., "Tom just pulled the entire contract. What the hell happened?" Then came the ripple effect. Harbor and Hearth wasn't just a client. It was the anchor. Without that deal, smaller subcontractors started pulling out, worried the company was unstable. Bank reps started asking questions. Marketing partners paused campaigns. Ashley's husband, Nate, who managed some of their logistics, called Ethan mid-afternoon, voice loud enough to hear from the next room. "You didn't tell me Tom was pulling the plug." "That affects me, Ethan." "What did you do?" I imagine Ethan stood frozen because the next message he sent was to me. "Ethan, 5:07 p.m., everything's falling apart. Can we talk, please?" I saw the notification. Let it sit. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I didn't open it. I didn't even let the preview fade in. Instead, I turned the phone screen down and returned to the living room where my mom and Nick were folding laundry and watching an old episode of Jeopardy! You want tea? Mom asked. I nodded. That would be perfect. The next day brought more fallout. My cousin Jess, who worked in commercial real estate, texted me a screenshot of an email her firm received. It was from Evergreen Builds, trying to renegotiate a contract for a showroom site. Jess had written back one sentence: "We prefer to work with vendors who treat families with respect." That night, I lay in bed at my mom's, curled under the familiar quilt I hadn't seen in years. The same one she used to wrap around me when I had nightmares as a kid. Now it just felt safe, not as a bandage, but as a boundary, a soft wall between me and everything I used to tolerate. I thought about replying to Ethan's message. I even opened it once, rereading his words like a puzzle. Can we talk? Not "I'm sorry." Not "you were right." Just "can we talk?" Talk about what? About how my family was too chaotic. About how he treated our marriage like a gated community with only his side on the guest list. I closed the message. I blocked the number. At breakfast, I told Mom I was going to stay a little longer. She didn't flinch, just refilled my mug and said, "Honey, this is your home. You stay as long as you need." Nick came by that afternoon with a smile and a bag of sweet corn. "We should do a barbecue," he said. "Real one. No petty rules, just good people and good food." "I don't even have a grill," I said, laughing. He winked. "Then it's a good thing I know a guy." Later that evening, we called Uncle Tom. He offered to bring the grill and a few pieces of prototype patio furniture from the new harbor and hearth line. "I could use some live testing," he said. "Plus, your mom's backyard needs some charm." I felt something lift in my chest. Maybe I hadn't lost a home. Maybe I'd just found the one that was real all along. The sun was high by the time the grill started smoking. Nick was in charge of the corn. He insisted on roasting it directly over the coals, brushing it with garlic, butter, and lime. Mom had her strawberry rhubarb pie cooling on the window sill like something out of a memory. I made pasta salad the way she liked it. No olives, extra dill. It wasn't some huge event. Just a few people in a familiar yard. But it felt whole, like something had clicked back into place. A week had passed since I left Ethan's house. I hadn't gone back, hadn't checked the mailbox, hadn't even looked at the shared streaming account we used. He hadn't called again. Just that one message floating unanswered in my deleted texts. Uncle Tom arrived just after noon in his pickup, parking by the side gate like he used to when we were kids. He brought a folding table, a set of cushioned chairs, and 2 sleek wooden benches from the new harbor and hearth line. "These will be on next season's cover," he said, unloading them. "Figured we'd test their comfort with actual human beings instead of showroom models." Mom laughed. "Well, if Olivia doesn't approve, you're in trouble." He gave me a wink and handed me a bag of sourdough rolls. By the time guests began arriving, Jess, her partner Dana, Nick's college friend who played the guitar and always brought too much hot sauce, the backyard felt alive again. There was no script, no pressure, just laughter, heat, and the scent of roasted vegetables curling through the air. For the first time in years, I wasn't in service mode. I wasn't folding napkins into origami or topping off wine glasses or chasing after Ethan's nephews with sunscreen. I was just sitting at the table, biting into corn that was too hot, listening to my mom retell a ridiculous story about Nick's middle school haircut. I laughed so hard I cried. Somewhere between the pie and the second round of grilled peaches, my phone buzzed. I knew it was him before I looked. Ethan. The entire table seemed to pause. I felt the shift. The silence behind laughter, the subtle glances. No one said anything, but Nick gently passed me a paper towel, and Uncle Tom took another bite of steak like nothing had happened. I stood up and stepped away, phone still in hand. I didn't want to take the call. But something told me I had to finish this. Not for him, for me. I swiped to answer and pressed the phone to my ear. "Olivia." His voice was rough, exhausted. There was a delay before he spoke again. I lost everything, he said. Contracts, suppliers, even Ashley's husband blames me for their fallout. People are pulling out left and right. I stayed quiet. He exhaled. Can we talk? I looked back toward the table. My mom was refilling glasses. Nick was pretending to argue with Dana over how spicy was too spicy. Tom had tipped back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes half closed under the shade. I turned away again and spoke finally. You said my family didn't belong, that they were too much, too chaotic. He was quiet. And you forgot, I continued, that I was part of them. Liv, please. I was angry. I didn't mean, yes you did, I said calmly. You meant every word. Maybe not out of hate, but out of who you are. And that's the part that hurts. Another silence. Then quieter, so this is how it ends. I looked at the grass beneath my feet, sunlit and real. No, I said. This is how it begins. Without you. He didn't respond. I didn't wait. I hung up and blocked the number. When I returned to the table, no one asked what he said. No one needed to. Instead, Nick handed me a plate with grilled chicken and a second slice of pie. Still warm, he said, and not burned. Shocking, right? I smiled. The moment wasn't cinematic. No triumphant music played, but something in me settled. That evening, after most of the guests had gone, I sat on the porch swing with my mom. She draped a blanket over our legs, the same knit one from when I was little. The sun had dipped low, casting the backyard in orange and soft gray. Tom stepped outside with 2 cups of herbal tea, one for him, one for Mom. He handed me a root beer from the cooler instead. Contracts being rerouted, he said casually. We'll use a firm out of Portland. Their rep has a sister who's a nurse. Invited us to her fundraiser next month. That sounds promising, Mom said. He nodded, then turned to me. How's the bench? I leaned back against the smooth curve of the wood. Perfect. He gave a rare, satisfied smile. Then it stays. Later, as the sky deepened and stars began appearing above the trees, I closed my eyes and let the quiet settle in. Not the silence I used to carry in Ethan's house, the cold, tight kind that choked emotion. This was different. This was peace. The kind that comes not from winning, but from choosing not to keep losing. I didn't leave Ethan to prove anything. I left because something inside me finally knew the difference between being tolerated and being loved. And when I opened my eyes, I saw my mom reaching for my hand, Nick tossing a marshmallow too high into the air, Tom quietly pulling out a pen and making a note about bench durability, my people, my chaos, my family, my home. And in my thoughts, the final words formed, gentle but clear. He told me I didn't need my family. Turns out I didn't need him.